Picture this. You're a teenager and you just got home from school. You toss your book bag and your binder and whatever else you have to the side and immediately boot up your computer. You're excited for a special new part of your daily routine. You log into an online game, one quite unlike all the others for the time, during a time where online games were kind of a new thing. A few weeks ago, you created your perfect avatar, a true representation of yourself. You took to exploring the world and all it has to offer. You met a couple of new friends along your journey who taught you the basic etiquette of role-playing, and this is the reason behind your newfound excitement. You've been waiting for hours to get back home and say hi to your new friends, traversing new worlds to hang out in with stunning visuals and engaging features that makes it seem like you're in a completely different world with the people who matter most to you. People of a certain quality that just don't exist in your everyday life. Sure, you might have people in your ordinary offline world, but here, you get to experience a new form of connection in a virtual world with people that you seem to connect with much more authentically. Homework can wait. For now. For many people who grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s, this was the experience they can recall from Furcadia, a pioneer in the MMO scene where players could create anthropomorphic avatars called furs, travel across user-generated worlds affectionately called dreams, and even create their own content. For many, Furcadia was their comfort, their escape, their dream. This is the place where they got to express themselves fully and connect with like-minded individuals in a nearly spiritual way. If you've ever played an MMO for a long period of time that you hold close to your heart, then you already know what this experience is like. And Furcadia, this seemingly unassuming little virtual social space by today's standards, was one of the very first games to do it. Furcadia was released on December 16, 1996 by Catnip Studios and was published by Dragon's Eye Productions Incorporated. Their website described it as the magical world where beasts have learned to walk upon two legs and speak. Players could create their avatars, travel across many user-generated worlds, create their own worlds, and engage in a number of social features. Many people would consider Furcadia to be an online social platform similar to that of Second Life or even earlier popular platforms like Habbo Hotel. But I think it shares far more in common with another certain popular online social playground, but we'll talk more about that later. For now, we need to talk about what type of game Furcadia actually was. And for that, we need to talk about mud. During the research phase for this video, I came across an interesting term, mud, or multi-user dungeon. This fascinated me because I actually have a degree in game development, and I never heard of the term before, or at least that much, while I was in university. So I went digging, and I came across a book called Designing Virtual Worlds by Richard Bartle. While I admittedly didn't read the entire book, and I definitely plan to at some point, I was more interested in the section on MUDs at the start of the book for the purposes of this video. As stated before, MUD stands for multi-user dungeon, but don't let the term dungeon fool you. These aren't dungeon crawler games or necessarily D&D precursors. Dungeon is just one of those terms that stuck. To quote Bartle in his book, the D in MUD stands for dungeon. Contrary to what many people assume, this has nothing to do with the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, and does not mean the game world had a dungeon setting. Instead, it's due to the fact that the version of Zork Roy played was a Fortran port called Dungeon. Roy wanted something that was like a multi-user dungeon, and the acronym MUD immediately presented itself. The Roy he's referring to here is Roy Trubshaw, who's cited in the book as a talented computer science undergraduate who programmed the original MUD, simply called MUD, in Macro 10 assembler language on a DEC System 10 mainframe at Essex University. And when was this revolutionary gaming technology created? Well, you might already know based on the technology I just cited, but if you were thinking this was like in the early 90s or even in the late 80s to be generous, you'd be wrong. Development on this began in the late 70s, and according to Designing Virtual Worlds, our boy Roy here had a working program by Easter of 1980. But this is where it gets interesting. a domino effect that would set in motion a cascade of events leading us to this present moment. Well, present moment, of course, being December of 1996, but we're getting there. You see, Roy couldn't finish the project. Again, according to the book Designing Virtual Worlds, Roy would enter the final year of his degree and wouldn't have time to complete Mud. So someone else would have to pick up the slack. Bartle points out that Roy had always been open to suggestions from other people on how Mud could be extended and improved. Eventually, Mud would get passed on to Richard Bartle himself, who would go on to finish the rest of the engine. And apparently, it caught on. Quote, "In the teeth of complaints about wasted resources at Essex University, members of the Computer Society were allowed to spend off-peak time doing anything non-academic they liked. Many of them chose to play Mud." And here's where we get to the real meat and potatoes of our story. You may be asking, Zen, what does any of this computer science history have to do with the virtual social app about furries? Well, I'm getting there. Just humor me a moment longer. Bartle goes on to say, quote, "Some, however, were inspired to write their own games in Muddle for use with the Mud engine. There were a number of these, of which the preeminent were Rock, based on TV's Fraggle Rock Muppet Show, Mist, original and anarchic, Blood, original and bloody, and Uni, the computer science department as a sword and sorcery virtual world." From here, Mud kinda took off and was cited in computer games magazines in the UK. The takeaway here is that Mud, started by Roy Trubshaw and finished by Richard Bartle, would be built upon and modified into a series of other virtual worlds by people inspired by it. Muds became designed for collaborative exploration and social interaction, as opposed to the standard fare of gameplay we expect from virtual worlds today. This would lay the foundation for a number of online platforms we'd see in the coming years. Things like Worlds.com, Habbo Hotel, Darkness Falls The Crusade, RuneScape, Wyvern, God Wars 2, Dragon Realms, and finally, DragonSpires. The 90s and early 2000s were an explosive time for internet culture. Gaia Online, Neopets, MySpace, Ask Jeeves, AOL Instant Messenger, those cringy 2003 text emoticons that we're apparently still using today. I swear to God, some of the same people who made fun of me for these are suddenly using— Oh, and we can't forget dial-up. Ah, that's the stuff. Nostalgic. If you grew up during this time of internet history, then you already know this, but this was the era of the proliferation of online socialization. If you were like me and you were too nerdy and lame to have friends in real life, you quickly discovered you could make friends online in some of these spaces. In the past, forums were the main place to socialize online. Forums, well, a little different, operated largely like Reddit does today. There was a forum for everything you could possibly think of. But two particular platforms served as a catalyst for the evolution of gamified social spaces: Neopets and Gaia Online. The primary feature of these sites were forums, despite how you only went on Neopets for the flash games and the giant omelet slice I see you, I know what you are, you can't hide from me, don't— Neopets featured an interactable world, in the form of various web pages where players could participate in activities and gain items and currency to help care for and customize their virtual pets. In the case of Neopets, the forums could be argued to be a lesser feature compared to the wider game, but this is still where players came to discuss things as a community, and they had forums for quite a bit of different topics. Gaia Online, on the other hand, at least in the early days, didn't have as much of a central game aspect. The forums were the main portion of the experience, where activity on the forums rewarded players with currency to spend on customizing their forum's avatar with various clothing and accessories. Some people really put in the grind for these items, evident by all the threads that existed solely for bumping in order to farm currency. This gamification of online communication not only resulted in large user bases relative to the era, but also sparked an era of genuine online connection between people, and that brings us to online relationships. Chances are, if you engaged regularly on these platforms, you would meet people that you'd want to keep in regular contact with outside of the platform. This led to a lot of people exchanging contact info such as email, IM usernames, and more to keep in contact. Over time, game-based social platforms started to become a powerhouse of online culture with games like EverQuest, Guild Wars, Final Fantasy XI, Phantasy Star Online, Star Wars Galaxies, and of course, World of Warcraft. If you're an MMO player, you know exactly how powerful the bonds you forge with other players in these environments can be, especially if you played them in the older days. Whether it's online or offline, humans crave connection. I can personally attest to this phenomenon, as some of the friendships I made online ended up becoming the longest lasting and most deeply intense relationships I've had the pleasure of having over the years. And in my opinion, that's what fueled the demand for games like this. But the main point is that not only were people looking for fun, gamified social environments, they were looking for connection. The hope of making new friends and forging long-lasting connections was a main motivator behind a lot of people adopting these games. With that desire for play and connection also comes an intense desire for creation, and early developers in this space caught wind of that. Furries. I think we all know what they are as people on the internet. Furries run the internet. Some of you may even identify as a furry in some form. I know I do. Why do you think I have these Foxier headphones? I can't even take them off. They're drilled into my skull. I'm in terrible agony. Someone please. Furries were around way before the internet became their home, with some furry conventions going back as far as the 1980s, which may be wild for a lot of us who really only discovered furries through their proliferation in online spaces. The community largely began in the late 70s and early 1980s, mainly among fans of certain anthropomorphic characters in sci-fi, fantasy, and comic books. Early influences included characters from Disney, Warner Brothers, and anime. In the 80s, furry zines like Furry Muck and Roar Brazzle circulated in niche communities. Eventually, conventions for the above-mentioned genres started housing furry panels, like WesterCon. Eventually, standalone furry conventions such as Conference began to be held in the late 80s, which helped cement a distinct furry identity. One seasoned game developer, named Dr. Cat, formerly an employee for Origin Systems, was keenly aware of this budding niche community. After cutting his teeth on numerous other projects throughout the 1980s, he set out to create a sort of social game. And while one might want to argue that Furcadia was definitely targeted towards those in the furry fandom, Dr. Cat specifically denies this, clarifying that the team working on Furcadia was targeting the general public and the overall love for animal-based characters in public media. He further clarifies this in a video interview with YouTuber Matt Barton titled MattChat 367, Dr. Cat on DragonSpires and the First MMOs.
So even fantasy is a bit niche, but we weren't aiming for furry fans. We knew they were out there. We knew they would come play our game. Amanda and I go to furry conventions and enjoy it. We're cats. We love being cats, whatever. But I thought, well, you know, Bugs Bunny and The Lion King and Disney movies and Sandra Boynton, cute greeting cards with little characters. And she did funny books with those characters. Those don't just sell to the 50,000 furries. It was a small fandom at the time. Now I'm sure there's hundreds of thousands or millions. They'll come play, but I'm aiming at the general public, and they like sports mascots and animal costumes. Sonic the Hedgehog is a video game with an animal character, and some of them said, "Oh yeah, I want to get involved in that." Other people are like, "No, I just like Furcadia. I'm not interested in this fandom."
So it's clear Dr. Cat wanted his social game to have mass appeal. The furry characters aspect was born out of society's apparent love and adoration for anthropomorphic animal characters. In fact, Furcadia even had a race called Human later on that allowed players to play as normal humans should they not really have a desire to play as a furry character.
We added a human character in, hoping we could start drawing in more of the people who I like to play games, but I only like to play a human. I only identify with my in-game character if it's human like me. And I think we were a little too slow to bring that in, but
This is Dr. Cat, aka David Shapiro. He began making games at the age of 14 as a hobbyist. Over time, he became obsessed with the idea of multiplayer games, largely believing they would be the future of video games. He couldn't have been more correct. In 1986, Dr. Cat joined Origin Systems, where he became known for his work on the Ultima series, with the moniker Dr. Cat even appearing in the games. After 5 years at Origin Systems, he left to pursue other projects. This move would mark his transition from corporate projects to independent projects. Alongside him out the door of Origin would also be a developer by the name of Tal Zamir, aka Manda. Together, they would start working on an online gaming service named Atlantis for a company that would later become Total Entertainment Network. Their shared ambition for multiplayer virtual worlds would spark them to partner on a project that would later become DragonSpires in 1994. Remember a bit ago when we talked about MUDs? Well, Furcadia started as a MUD called DragonSpires, an early MUD launched by David Shapiro, aka Dr. Cat, and Talsmere of Dragon's Eye Productions, and additional design done by Jeff D., an artist specializing in tabletop games such as Dungeons & Dragons. Like Furcadia would go on to be, DragonSpires was mostly social. It didn't feature a lot of modern, goal-oriented game design like we expect from modern MMOs or modern online games. According to nacademic.com, DragonSpires included features such as a palette-swappable player avatar, a map, rudimentary social features like chat and messaging, arena combat, shops, a soccer field, a biscuit that turns the player into a dog, and a graffiti sign, which recorded spoken text. The important thing to note about DragonSpires is that, unlike most prior MUDs that were largely text-based, DragonSpires was one of the first attempts at creating graphical MUD, using tile-based 2D sprites and mouse interaction. This was a huge leap for the industry, and quite an ambitious project for a small team of 2 to 3 developers at a time. But this graphical element is what would help DragonSpires stand out from most MUDs of the era. It was distributed on the aforementioned Total Entertainment Network, giving the game its niche following prior to the internet boom. What I found particularly interesting about this portion of my research is that you can actually find the source for DragonSpires on GitHub, which has been uploaded by a user named Bostelk. If you go to the website jdspire.sourceforge.net, you can actually see a screenshot of DragonSpires and get a glance into the earliest formation of what would become Furcadia. Finally, we arrive at December of 1996, where Furcadia was formally born. Furcadia would build upon the early MUD designs of old by adding graphical improvements, user-friendly world-building tools, and one of the very first platforms for, well, furries. Chances are, if you're a furry between the ages of 28 and 37, Furcadia was very formative for you. Though today the game seems really bare bones, it was revolutionary at the time of its launch in 1996. Players would be greeted with a character creation screen upon starting the game for the first time, and would be able to select from a variety of character types. These included rodent, equine, feline, canine, and lapine. There were also premium avatars available, but you had to spend real-world money on those. After creating their character, the player would be dropped into a sort of starter world that would allow the player to become antiquated with the control scheme of the game. The game was played primarily on windowed mode, though you could maximize it. In the upper right quadrant of the screen would be the game world itself, with a very large chat box or log underneath it. This chat log would show dream information, player chat, and system messages very similar to what you'd find in just about any MMO today, like RuneScape or Final Fantasy XIV. To the left of all that, you have a series of tabs that allow you to access different types of interfaces for certain functions. These include Move, Go To, Edit, Dego, and Miscellaneous. Movement was performed under the Movement tab, with a series of directional areas that the user would click on to facilitate movement from their avatar in that direction relative to their current position in the game world. Or you could just use the mouse button. Players could also cycle through various poses like sitting down. The Go To tab featured interworld or dream navigation. Edit allowed players to utilize creation tools. Dego is the term used for Furcadia's premium content, and this tab is where players would utilize their premium features. The Miscellaneous tab hosted your typical game settings. Above the tabs, you'd see your player information and a quick button to access the help documentation. Using the simple navigation system with the directional buttons, players could navigate the current dream that they're located in. Alright, so I bet you're wondering, what is a dream? Well, I touched lightly on this before, but in essence, dreams are locations within Furcadia that your character can visit. We'll be getting more into the comparisons later on in the video, but dreams are essentially worlds in VRChat. When using old-fashioned MMO language, zone would be fitting as well. That said, you weren't limited to just developer-created dreams in Furcadia. You see, Furcadia came with an entire suite of what you could call developer tools for players to create their own dreams. Furcadia has guidelines over what acceptable content can be put in user-created dreams, but aside from that, the sky is the limit as to what players can create. To travel to another player's dream, the player would need to travel through a portal, which labeled the dream they would be entering. There were plenty of dreams made by the developers that the players could visit, but to visit player-created dreams, you'd have to visit Allegria Island, or a similar hub. These hubs have numerous slot tiles, where players could upload their dreams with a simple command after creating them. Many people might ask, what was playing Furcadia like? And to answer that question, it's important to understand that it depends on the kind of dream you're visiting. Some dreams are created with the express purpose of role-playing, with the dream designed as a sort of environment and backdrop to the events going on in the roleplay. Others created sophisticated adventure dreams that integrated seamlessly with the roleplay scenario. In more extreme cases, especially back in the earlier days of Furcadia, expert dream makers would even incorporate types of minigames that could be played using the game's basic functions and some clever scripting on part of the dream maker. Regardless of your preferred type of dream to hang out in, Furcadia's main gameplay revolved entirely around the dreams created by other players. What was the major component of the Furcadia experience within dreams? Well, to put it simply, Furcadia was designed to be a social hub. It was great to meet new, like-minded people and engage with them. But far more commonly, this social element was the precursor to Furcadia's main attraction: role-playing. Role-playing was an incredibly popular pastime in this era of the internet. Most of you can relate to the idea of your online persona being different from the one you put on in the real world, but this era of the internet was on a slightly different level. Back then, it felt like people took on an entirely different identity for the virtual world, like an alter ego. While much of that mentality still exists today, I feel like we're a little more balanced, integrating our real selves with our online virtual existence and expressing ourselves in a more authentic way. Role-playing was an extension of this, where people assume the identity of one or even multiple fictional characters. This was the main draw of Furcadia. Some people role-played as idealized versions of themselves, and others totally unique and complex characters. Dreams were essentially a venue that provided a narrative setting for the roleplay environment. While not all dreams were made for the purposes of roleplaying, a good many of them were. It was more than escapism. This was the pre-social media era. We didn't have all the tools and services to stay connected with people and meet new people as easily as we do today. Before Twitter and Discord, roleplay essentially was social media. Storytelling, community, self-discovery, and expression, all of these were rolled up into one. The beautiful thing about Furcadia, and why people who played it adored it so much, was the capacity for expression without judgment. When I played it back in the good old days, these were some of the most wholesome and accepting people I had the pleasure of meeting. And there's something poetic about connecting with other people through writing and creativity, through the characters we all created and expressed. It's like being given access to another dimension of a person beyond a surface that you just can't really scratch in the real world. For many, roleplay was the first safe space for young people to explore identity. Everything from gender, sexual orientation, power, vulnerability, and a sense of self long before there were ever hashtags or Discord servers for it. While roleplay has existed in some form for essentially as long as there have been humans, the internet increased in accessibility for it. Before online games, people would roleplay on forums, instant messaging, or chat rooms. Furcadia offered a level of enhanced immersion where roleplay could take place in real time, but with the added immersion of visual avatars, movement, and visual environments, without the need for a knowledge of programming or other technical expertise. All of the tools to play out your ideal roleplay scenario were at your fingertips. There were quite a few different types of roleplay, but in Furcadia they boiled down to two main types with several subgenres. Persona RP featured players acting out as original characters through their furs. Then there was Feral RP. Feral in this context doesn't mean anything spicy, although that doesn't mean spicy roleplaying didn't exist. Instead, it refers to roleplayers roleplaying as wild anthro characters, or just straight up wild animals. In fact, many premium Furcadia avatars featured feral forms, where you could play as creatures like wolves, foxes, cats, etc. From here, your standard roleplay genres were played out. Drama, romance, adventure, action, you name it. Each dream was a new genre, and each player a co-author, all performed by strangers who would eventually become the best of friends. This wasn't quite like how roleplay happens in places like Discord or even older instant messaging programs. It was slower, more theatrical, and more experimental. Furcadia thrived in this environment and became one of the main reasons why people stuck with it. It wasn't perfect, but it was pure. Just your imagination, someone else's, and the space between. All before the era of curated online personalities and algorithmic feeds. But of course, the game would age. Online games became more popular, just as the developers predicted. MMOs started releasing and becoming more mainstream. By the end of the 2000s, it was clear that Furcadia was becoming antiquated, and it was time for a facelift. On November 14th, 2012, Catnip Studios launched a Kickstarter for Furcadia, the Second Dreaming. Rather than creating a whole new game or sequel to Furcadia, the devs were asking for funding to create a web-based client, update their web pages, and give the game a modern and enhanced look with a focus on growing the platform and providing quality of life changes to make Furcadia more compatible with the modern age. The devs also mentioned wanting to increase download speeds for users, provide the full 32-bit color support for the browser version, improve the layouts, and implement a new account management system. A number of stretch goals were also discussed, including new dreams, avatar creation features, and a super bonus level. While other stretch goals were on the table, the funding requirements for these stretch goals were not met. The Kickstarter was able to raise $106,835 from 877 backers. That's an average of about $122 per backer. Say what you want about this niche game from the early 2000s, but its fans are incredibly loyal even to this day. Furcadia, the Second Dreaming Part 1 was then later released in 2016, though I couldn't find an exact date. So, how is it? How did the launch go, and how did people feel about the Kickstarter? Well, there aren't any critic reviews on Metacritic specifically for the Second Dreaming, and the site also doesn't have a score specifically for the Second Dreaming, but Furcadia itself carries a 6.0 user score on Metacritic, with some reviewers saying things like, "With the world based almost entirely on user-made areas, there's always new things to see and do here. That focus makes for a community full of very creative people, too, which makes it a great place to hang out. I used to play it a lot when I was a kid. Then returned recently, and it's an AFK wasteland, with the exception of one dream that I know of. Nevertheless, I can't bring myself to uninstall it, so I must give it a good review, since there's something I can still find to like about it." Some users, however, were not so forgiving. "What's left of Furcadia in 2020 are the toxic trolls that drove away its player base. If you don't agree with everything they say, you're their next target, and there's no room for diversity of thought. The rule enforcers are often tricked by these trolls into banning players who are responding to being trolled. Contacting the staff to rectify such matters is pointless, as they just ignore complaints in order to work on Digos to sell." Admittedly, there are only 4 reviews on the Metacritic site, and aside from publications from ages past, there isn't much that's been said about Furcadia, the Second Dreaming, since its release. At least not from any major publications or reputable review sources. So, what's Furcadia like today? Is it a relic of a bygone era, doomed to be discarded into the dustbin of history? Or is it a niche but thriving virtual microenvironment with a fiercely loyal fanbase? And more importantly, can you still have fun with Furcadia in 2025? Well, I think it's about time we find out.
I'm playing the fun horse game, so I could be a horse girl in this game.
There's no fun horse game.
I sent a screenshot of this to my other friends, and they're like, "This is an Uma Musume."
I haven't heard anything. Hold on, where am I even going?
How about
I don't know. Where are you going? Wow, it is bright in here.
God, wait, I saw Precure. Wait, that's Sailor Moon! Oh my god, they can put like in their personal assets and stuff? This is kind of crazy. My god, there's a fucking...
Okay, here we go. Oh my god, okay, this is very bright.
Wait, there's a sprite from fucking Grief Syndrome over here. It's crazy.
Not gonna lie, I love this place.
This is Hatsune Miku.
I feel like we're trespassing in a forbidden zone.
There's Midori!
Oh, where?
I found the Toho.
Wait, this is Gold Ship?
Oh, Jim!
I thought that was one of you guys.
Which way is north?
It's just Gold Ship!
Kita's gone black! Oh my god, it's everybody!
So
Okay.
I actually went into like the dream builder. I
Wait.
kind of want to like mess around building one.
You want to build a dream?
Oh, you can just follow people in this. It's like RuneScape.
Actual scenario. You can... Yo. Oh, that's so cool.
Oh my god, I'm getting AOL Instant Messenger vibes from Furcadia Pounce here. Oh my god, I'm a Charmander.
I'm like a
Very
weird
nice,
Pikachu. What the fuck?
Oh, I'm what the fuck this thing is.
Obviously, I have to.
No, you can't be Glaceon. I want to be Glaceon.
Alright, I'll be
Oh,
Leafeon.
I spawned as Vulpix.
Oh, and
That's
it's our colors of our characters. I get it now.
Wait, no one likes Piplup. I'm not gonna be Piplup.
Does this technically
What
mean...
the fuck? Hello? You want to fight?
I was saying no one likes Piplup, but I love Piplup. I think he's great.
Okay, I like Piplup too.
The
Oh my
light.
god, this is so pretty.
Yeah, isn't it?
What the hell?
Just a bunch of
Hey,
animals.
whoa, okay.
Snorlax.
Ninetales is this is shading and stuff. That's kind of wild.
I am on a Lapras.
2009. Go to Furcadia.
Oh my fucking god, bro!
I am a pony.
Oh, okay.
Holy fucking shit, bro!
Okay.
Yep.
Hey.
I'm just gonna put my haunches down here.
This is cool, I guess.
This is cool, I guess.
Obviously,
I don't.
Hello, every pony.
But custom
I
texture.
don't hate
it. Every pony.
It's very nice looking.
Lily, you are just Pinkie Pie.
Pinkie Pie is my favorite pony. She was my favorite when I watched the show.
You look like toothpaste.
I look like toothpaste.
Oh, that's me. I was losing track of which pony I was.
Oh my god, is this it? Is this just the world? Oh no!
Oh,
Eponymous, this is supposed to be like a brony recovery thing.
Oh.
It's Final Fantasy 11.
How?
It literally is, though. What the hell?
It's Final Fantasy 11.
It really is,
Hold on.
though.
What are you talking about? Where are you?
Mezzo, hit the H button on the go-to. H.
It's literally 11.
The water.
This is more like Kazam. This isn't Winders.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is more like Kazam.
Realistic Wolf RP.
Should
Wait,
we
what?
go to the
Realistic Wolf RP.
No, I see that. I'm just like very curious now.
It might be what's called a feral roleplay scenario. So in feral roleplay dreams, you are to roleplay as an actual wild animal.
Oh yeah, they just turns me into a wolf. Okay, that makes sense.
should I go
Yeah.
should
I don't
go
know what
to
I
the
expected.
Okay, found Juno. Coming over.
I'd like to see you now, but unfortunately, I'm stuck walking very slowly. Sunny, we need to cook.
Sunny, we need to cook.
I'm sorry, though. This is really funny for some reason. It's what damn gambling here.
That's like the ERP area, isn't it?
I guess.
It's the 18 and over area.
Uh-huh.
Well, what was it say? It's the adult 18 over environments.
Oh yeah, I was here earlier.
16 and up. And then there's Old Town, which is adult socializing.
Okay, that hyena has reference art, and it is lewd.
Okay.
It is
So-
lewd.
It is lewd.
It's also really well drawn.
So, what the heck are we actually doing here?
I don't know, but
Just-
these chains are strong enough to bind me if I desire.
Oh, where the
I
heck
don't-
did Sunny go?
I went to
Lost
Lost
Lakes,
Lakes.
apparently. I'm in the
Oh.
Lion King RP. What the hell?
You went into Lion King RP?
Why not? No one will ever know me again. This is taking a long time to load. What the hell?
West Virginia is fine.
No,
Can't
it's
you drive
not.
through Ohio to
You can
No.
tell it's a US server where people who are under the age of 21 are not even allowed to pretend to drink.
the size small t-shirt. Some hyphenated punk band's name across the chest clings to a barely toned torso and a slight narrow shoulders. A charming little butt, usually in black, tight black jeans. Wildly tossed hair streaked with vivid magenta. Come on, you gotta be curious about pretty little twinks like him.
Syed, you did that in perfect beat to Gangster's Paradise.
I know! I was thinking the same thing!
It was so good.
Dropping bars.
That's all that game's about.
You were
It was
perfect.
literally perfect, though. It was
Yeah,
weird.
you were literally perfectly on beat.
I'm like, are they doing it as a bit?
You were literally perfectly on beat, and then I was freaking out. I'm like, no, let him cook, let him cook, let him cook.
I may never come back to this game, but I will never forget these memories.
Now we can get into the real meat and potatoes of this video. VRChat is the new Furcadia. Okay, it might be obvious to some of you, but let me explain anyway. Let's not mince any words. Furcadia was largely for furries, whether the devs intended for it to be or not. Now, I'm pretty furry adjacent myself, but I'm not necessarily in the community, and describing the furry community, or more accurately communities, would require a video in its own right, as there are many subcultures and divides. But I have the mind to argue that Furcadia was the birthplace of the online furry community as we know it. It was a place where people could roleplay and connect with other like-minded people and form meaningful relationships and have fun, all through the lens of your furry avatar. And we see the same thing happening in VRChat, with furry models being among the most popular avatars used by players today. But let's face it, Furcadia's technology, even in the Second Dreaming, lacks the true immersive and technological innovation of the modern age. Enter VRChat. Created by Graham Gaylor and Jesse Jodrey, I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that right, in 2014 as a social VR platform actually inspired by Second Life, that Second Life, VRChat started as a basic multiplayer VR experience that quickly gained traction with its focus on user-generated content. Powered by Unity and Udon scripting. Initially released on Steam Early Access in 2017, it gained popularity among VR enthusiasts very quickly. The beautiful thing was that VRChat was not just VR exclusive, as those without a VR headset could play the game on their desktop PCs. This served to greatly expand its user base and accessibility, possibly even boosting the sales of VR headsets as a result, though a more sudden boost in popularity would later occur due to the discovery by users of VRChat's potential as a meme factory. VRChat's popularity didn't start with a bang or a flash, but with a meme. You've all seen it, and you probably saw it for the first time from a VRChat video. I'm talking, of course, about Ugandan Knuckles. Led by content creators like Soviet Womble, Forsen, and Jameski, the Ugandan Knuckles meme would define the chaotic early days of VRChat, attracting many new users who joined for the purpose of trolling and creating viral content. And boy, was this a successful endeavor. The sudden influx of trolls, disruptive players, and other unmentionable crimes not safe for sensitive YouTube advertisers, the devs had to introduce stricter moderation tools as the platform struggled with handling the influx of these players. And while the memes were a force in their own right, VRChat, and quite frankly the world, wasn't ready for the encroaching existential threat that was VTubers. VRChat became a hub for VTubers as the genre began to grow in popularity, and technologies like VRChat and others significantly reduced the barrier to entry for new creators. VTubers like Zentreya, Fruit, and others began to fuel the fire. Some VTubers even use VRChat as a sort of wrapper for their entire show, often fully interacting with users in their own custom bedroom or venue with their fully detailed model. Later in 2020, VRChat would introduce Udon and allow for advanced scripting and mechanics, leading to the creation of complex virtual worlds within VRChat. Things such as horror games, MMO-likes, and shooters were now possible within VRChat. I haven't tried any of these types of venues myself, but it really is impressive just how technically advanced VRChat has become over the last decade. All of that said, VRChat became the premier hub for furries, anime fans, and roleplayers due to its advanced social features and the support, and now affordability, of full-body tracking. Entire third-party economies now exist centered almost entirely around VRChat. Many users create long-term friendships and even relationships in VRChat, some even going as far as to have entire virtual dating apps for the exclusive purpose of finding a romantic VR partner. Do with that information what you will, but not all things were rosy. With this level of immersion and mainstream cultural appeal comes scandal and controversy, something we didn't see a lot of in Furcadia, mostly because the internet and online communities themselves were still very niche, not mainstream like today. Like I talked about earlier, VRChat struggled heavily with trolls, harassment, and inappropriate content directed at minors. The outcry from these situations all led to massive ban waves and policy shifts, and finally, the introduction of easy anti-cheat in 2022, something that VRChat players are still angry about today. VRChat wanted to crack down on modding, something that seems a little oxymoronic considering VRChat's foundation as a platform based on user-generated content. But there were also severe problems approaching that needed to be addressed, such as overly detailed and poorly optimized avatars that led to crashes, players doxing other players through VRChat's networking vulnerabilities, and the growing divide between VR users and desktop users. Along with some policy changes, VRChat unveiled VRChat Plus, a subscription service that allows for avatar favorites, custom nameplates, and as a way to financially support development with future updates aiming to balance monetization with community-driven content. And with the rise of corporations attempting to create quote-unquote metaverses, such as Horizon Worlds by Meta, formerly known as Facebook, it's definitely left VRChat thirsty for some of the money that appears to be on the table from monetizing virtual worlds. But despite all these differences, I still argue that VRChat remains the Furcadia of our day. it's hard to look at something like VRChat and not compare it to this rather forgotten piece of social gaming software. VRChat has all the same things Furcadia has and more. Customizable 3D avatars, social spaces, user-generated content in the form of worlds rather than dreams, and is beloved particularly by the furry community. As a side tangent, VRChat also offers a new level of depth by offering a virtual space in which people can control their avatar with their own bodies, leading to content creators taking the literal form of their persona to create and distribute content, as well as interact with their fans. Both platforms allow players to design, upload, and share custom avatars. Anthropomorphic avatars are some of the most popular and frequently used models in VRChat, and there are many different art styles on display. Where Furcadia had dreams, VRChat has custom worlds built by players to attract other players within a specific community, such as roleplay clubs and roleplay worlds. On the flip side, roleplay is not an assumed default in VRChat like it was in Furcadia, meaning players will often designate the purpose of a given world or room they've created, such as roleplaying. VRChat also comes with a variety of emotes and expressions, similar to the preset and custom macros from Furcadia. VRChat also allows for direct socialization, albeit with one's voice as opposed to just text-based comms like in Furcadia. And of course, the elephant in the room here is that both games have what many people often associate VRChat with: not safe for work communities. Both platforms allow for the designation of 18+ only spaces, meaning you can indulge in your most hedonistic virtual tendencies, though VRChat offers a whole new dimension of immersion. You see what I did there? It's 3D. It's 3D. That's the new dimension. The third dimension, the Z-axis. That's the... Furcadia's Dream Editor allowed users to create custom areas for players to engage with each other in, decorated to the creator's liking. VRChat also allows for this, but with more complexity given its Unity-based world-building tools. You can create anything in VRChat, and I mean anything. This allows several types of small and large-scale events to occur, like VRChat's Anthrocon virtual meetup, not dissimilar from Furcadia's seasonal roleplay events and gatherings. So while Furcadia was one of the first true virtual furry social spaces, VRChat has evolved into the ultimate 3D avatar experience. It offers greater immersion, interactivity, and creative freedom. For now, the future remains unsure. VRChat seems to be growing in instability, with players frustrated at the new measures taken by the company in its effort to both monetize and moderate the platform. New competitors are rising to attempt to usurp VRChat, offering differing layers of immersion and complexity and focusing on different areas to try and divert niche groups from VRChat. Some people may even say that VR itself may not actually be a viable gaming industry, remaining mostly niche and failing to capture mainstream appeal. The truth is that online communities live, breathe, and die, just like any other thing in this universe. And while Furcadia or even VRChat may not last forever, what they represent, the creative freedom, the community-first design, and the connections that people form through their time there, that's something that will always have people craving for more virtual spaces to express themselves in. Platforms will live and die. Technology will improve. But this fundamental aspect of our existence as human beings will remain a constant through it all. Furcadia walked so VRChat could run. That's my thesis in this video. And whatever comes next, it will be walking or running in the same paw prints of those who came before. These games aren't just games. They're canvases. Canvases where players can exercise the almighty power of creation and give themselves the opportunity to exist and connect within those creations. If you've never tried Furcadia, maybe now's the time. It might be small, it might be incredibly niche, and you might not see a whole lot of people online. But who knows? You might just find a piece of yourself waiting there. And if nothing else, I think everyone should experience this precious piece of internet history that touched so many lives. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves, and don't forget that I love you.